Hi, I'm a soft-spoken godmother, and I have a story for you that was inspired by a movie that I saw years ago, an old fairy tale about the sister that saved her brothers, six princes, and they survived a spell by a wicked witch. And this is not for children. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I do have a version for the younger children too on my streams. The Sister That Saved Six Brothers, Part 1. Once upon a time, a king was left with six sons and only one daughter when his queen died. His depression went on for more than a year. His hunting buddies finally talked him into a hunting trip. He was an awesome horseman and rode on far ahead of his companions. Soon he was lost deep in the woods with no clear way out. He knew that any direction he might decide to go could have been the opposite way from his castle. He began to see that he may end up spending the night alone with the wild beasts and critters of the forest. Owls were hooting, and a bat swooped in low toward him, checking him out. It was sundown, and after much searching, his hunting buddies finally gave up and went home with no game to prepare for meat. In the morning, they said they would search for him again. They feared the worst may have already happened, for there was no trace found of him, no hoof prints on the forest floor. Coming down a pathway glowing as the setting sun streamed through red, yellow, and orange leaf trees was an old woman carrying a bucket of coals. It was autumn, and she needed the coals to start up her fire should it go out in the night. Her clothing was in shambles, with ashes blackening her dress and apron. Her hair was gray and mousy brown with ratty tangles. As she came closer and would pass him to the other end of the pathway, he greeted her and asked her to please tell him which way was out of the forest and back to his own castle. She only agreed to help him if he would meet her daughter and take her with him back to the castle as his wife. He decided his options were few, and he was getting very hungry, so he followed her over the trail into the dusk. Very soon they came to a cottage with a rickety porch that needed painting and repairs. He began to wonder if this woman was an outcast witch. There was something sly about her, and she moved with a disdainful swoosh of her sooty garments. She had refused his offer to carry the bucket with, "I don't need anyone to help me, not even the likes of you." Everything about the cottage was dark and gloomy. Everything was off-putting. Yet he went inside with the women thinking, "What a feminist." Inside was dinner waiting on the table, set for three. It was as if they knew that he was coming. There was a beautiful young woman dressed in a red, low-busted dress with touches of black lace, wearing bangles and anklets. She was stirring something savory in a huge cauldron hung over the crackling fire. He could barely take his eyes off her enchanting appearance and movements until their eyes met. Immediately he was struck with dread at what he had agreed to do, to take her home to his castle as his wife. His wife? Oh no! What have I done? What have I agreed to do? I'd have been better off to take my chances with the friendly beasts of the forest. So his thoughts went, but there was no way out. The conversation during dinner was slow while he gathered his courage to fulfill his promise. He began to wonder how they would go, now that darkness had already fallen. Soon, with no offer of dessert, the mother told that they needed to be off. She came near and whispered in his ear that he would be hopelessly lost in the forest if he decided not to follow through with his promise. He nodded hesitantly, but immediately they found themselves, horse and new couple, at the drawbridge to his own castle. It had already fallen deep upon all things. So he called to the watchman, who responded with a joyful, "Hail, thou honored king!" The king showed the lady to her own suite and called for flowers to be delivered to the room. He reassured her that the next morning he would order all that would be made ready for the beautiful wedding and coronation for them, and they would certainly be married before nightfall. Ladies in waiting brought warm milk and rich vanilla cakes for her bedtime snack. Also was brought warm slippers and a flowing, sweet nightgown. They put wrapped hot rocks inside covers of her elegant bed, near where her feet would soon rest. The king departed without even a kiss. He slept badly. He no sooner had gone to sleep, after what seemed forever, than he awoke with a start. His pipe was the only thing that would bring any comfort. Next day was filled with a flurry of activity, and as evening drew near, the couple were married with a flair to suit his bride. The new queen was crowned, and all the attending court bowed low to her. They soon exchanged looks with each other, some whispering that there was something odd in her haughty demeanor. Her eyes blazed with greed and fervor that they could not explain. She had the eyes of hazel that flashed green or brown by turns. Her mood was never light and contented. The king was little impressed with the character of his queen. She might be the most lovely woman on earth, but he was not comfortable spending any time together after their very short honeymoon, and he began to spend time away more and more. She had made hurried plans to He had made hurried plans to protect his children. He had seen her dark glances toward them. He lost no time in placing them in a cottage deep in the woods, on the opposite side of the castle from where he had fatefully met his bride and queen. He had taken counsel from the wisest of the women of the court, and one of great knowing. She prepared a spool or reel wound with jute. They unwound the twine as she led them deep into the forest, filled with dappled light. The white cottage was surrounded by trees, some of the fruit variety, flowers and shrubs of every kind common to the area. The porch was painted robin egg blue, with white railing and porch swings, with hanging canaries, who sang sweet songs in their gold gilded cages. Cats played on the porch, and a lazy dog lounged at the foot of one of the cooks, who was peeling potatoes for dinner. There were cows and goats, chickens and pigs in the barn. Gorgeous hogs with long manes ate from the greenest grass of their stalls. There were staff for the kitchen, who also kept a kitchen garden of herbs and vegetables. The youthful children would be well cared for, but find much to keep them happy in between his visits. Their rooms were comfortable, if not ornate, for a cottage. Father the king soon had to return to his castle, now darkened by the presence of his queen. He returned with gifts for his children frequently via the spool of jute, since no one could ever find the cottage without it. The queen was soon displeased with his many long hunting trips. She figured out from the staff that the staff was unconcerned, as if they knew why he was gone so long. They acted as though this was normal, yet she suspected more. She offered great rewards to any staff who would come forward and chat with her and give her more information about his whereabouts. One greedy maid finally showed her the spool of jute. She was richly rewarded. The queen set about sewing cloaks embroidering enchantments all throughout the garments for each child, including the daughter. When these had been prepared, she set out on her walk into the woods. She thought it so odd, the difference in these woods. So much light filtered through the branches of the trees, and so many more wildflowers. She did not care, and these did not warm her cold heart, which was bitter with jealousy. The young ones came out to greet whomever was tramping through the forest, thinking her to be their own father. With little awareness of her mood and plans, they got just close enough that she could throw the cloaks over each one. Suddenly, all 6 young men turned into swans, graceful, but nonetheless shocked. They trumpeted loudly, and their sister looked out of the window just in time to see them fly off into the sky, their dark bodies in stark contrast to the blue sky. She saw with horror that the queen was clapping her hands with joy. The queen forgot about the daughter and beat a hasty retreat. She was using the father's spool to wind up the jute as she found her way back home by the same magic that brought her. If only the spool's magic had taken her away, deep into her own familiar darkening woods. This was not to be, and the story gets darker and darker with time. Reader, beware that parts of this are not for the faint or very young children. What happened near the end of the story is very cruel indeed. Part of history is woven into the words upon these pages. So yes, part 2 is already in my stream, another stream, and other links can be found. And also, I'll be creating little streams to announce when I'm going to have story time, which will probably be on Sundays and Tuesdays. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest. Good night.